for clients, but we also design and build digital products for ourselves and launch those as proprietary businesses. One of which we're going to talk about tonight. So, just to briefly outline how the talk is going to go. We're going to talk about a web app called Foldable Me, which we have designed and developed. I'm going to introduce it quickly, then Alice is going to talk for about 10 minutes about how it came to life and how it came into existence, how it's going now, and then I'm going to look at some of the lessons that we've learned from that, and then there'll be about 10 minutes for questions at the end if anyone has any questions. So first of all, what is Foldable Me? It's basically a web app, which is a tool to customize your own little foldable miniature character in the likeness of yourself. But it's best explained probably with the video that our colleague Sandeep made. So there's no words. There's only no words. That's Foldable Me in a nutshell, and I'm going to hand over to Alice to talk about how it came about.
So Foldable Me started from something very similar to what you guys are going to be doing tomorrow, and that is we have a 4-day hack day here at Mint Digital where they take us away to a hotel out of town and they give us lots of food and drink and they lock us up and they say, here's a brief, do something with it. And last year's brief was design something online, something digital, that scratches a creative itch and then produces something physical at the end of it. And often you only got 4 days, so we all go there with an idea of what we're going to do. And Richard, our colleague, who actually is featured right there, he'd gone around with this little prototype. He's gone around to the export markets and the cafes and shown it around. And it had a really good reaction with mainly females, I think, which got us all very excited and thought maybe we were onto a winner. So we went off with this idea in mind and basically had 4 days to produce the tool and design the business around it. So the challenges we faced, so each group has designers, developers and some other people within the business, so the managers and so forth. The design challenge was how do you make this tool fun? How can it be, we wanted you to be able to create your face and also your clothes. So it could take quite a lot of time depending how many options we had. So our challenge was, let's make it fun. And so this is an early wireframe of how we thought the tool might look. We sort of were working towards roughly a landscape iPad. We thought that might be some way that people might like to enjoy using it, showing out. So that's an early wireframe of the tool. And looking a little bit forwards, before this is kind of how it looked as we sort of got towards the finish line of our 4-day application. We've now got a bit more colour, a bit more style to it. So we very much, like the guys were saying before, we worked very much in wireframe before we did anything, very clever with the colours. So at the end of 4 days, we presented our app, our working app. So you could go onto the website, there was a home page, you could create a foldable. There was limited options at this time, but then you could add it to a basket. We hadn't quite finished adding, putting through the purchase flow yet, but for the purposes of displaying it to our colleagues, that was enough. And everyone was quite convinced by the idea. We'd obviously done enough to convince our colleagues, so what we did next is put it on Kickstarter. is we wanted to launch to the public, but for that we needed more assets, more eyes, more ears, etc. And we didn't have an illustrator. So we went to Kickstarter and we asked them, can we have some money for an illustrator? And it proved very popular. We got funded by 1,000%. And so we got a lot of cash. And that meant that we could go and we hired an illustrator. The illustrator came in and helped us increase our asset set. So, for example, lots of different eyebrows, lots of different colours, so on and so forth. While the illustrator was doing that, the rest of the team were also fixing the rest of the fulfillment process, adding in the actual purchase, looking it up to PayPal, all the kind of technical stuff, so the whole thing worked. And so this is something that we didn't quite have in 4 days, but we added after once we knew that we were going to be taking it forward to a live thing. And improving the product as well. That was a key thing because some of the old prototypes, they would sort of crack when you folded them. So we did some work on a newer version that used the laminate on top of the cardboard, and it solved that issue. So we spent some time on the product as well. And yeah, the cutting tool we used for it. So now we're in this phase where we launched live in September, and people are buying foldables, which is great. They're sending us lots of photos of how they're interacting with their foldable Miis. But we're still continuously improving the site. Nick's really kind, they're giving us a bit of time to keep it going, keep improving it. And we're doing that through a series of ways. So one of the things we're doing is user testing. So we're getting people on the website. We're just using an example here is usertesting.com. It's a really quick way to get people to test something you've built. You can actually get people to test wireframes as well. It doesn't have to be over a website. You can just tell them that before they start. And just watching someone using it really, really helps you work out where the issues are, where they can't find something, and other feedback as well. We're also adding features where we need them, because we started with something very basic. You could just create a foldable and buy it, that was it. And so we're adding features like sharing and discount codes, and the kind of things you need so that we can promote it more. We do spend time looking at our Google Analytics to work out how we can improve. The biggest problem we have at the moment is people getting from the basket through to the purchase flow. We think the price might have something to do that, which is why we introduced the discount codes. Also, we spent some time on our offline assets. So our first version of the envelope looked like this, and it just had a sticker on it. That was just to get us going. And then we spent a bit more time, and we improved it. So when the product arrives on the doorstep, it looks as good as the website and the product itself. We've also spent time working on our internal processes. The key to this is really just improving our communication amongst the team, so the designers and the developers working closer together. And Nikki's going to talk more about that now.
So I missed out on the whole fun bit at the beginning when they got to go to a nice big country house, and I came in just as we were about to launch. So I think it's appropriate for me to talk about lessons that we learned and things that we overcame during that period. So the first, I would say, is to consider the future development of what you are creating at the time that you are creating it. It can be more important to put a useful visual framework in place than to focus on highly polished details early on. I say this because when I picked up Foldable Me, it had obviously just had been a 4-day rushed job, which did look really good, but we did run into issues when we were trying to develop a few more features and things like that, which was a little bit difficult. So how we overcame that, for example, is by producing a style guide. Ideally, this would have been put in place quite early on, which is something that we learned to do it as early as possible. The benefits of having a style guide is that it forces you to think about all the functions, the features that you might want to build, and then you can then distill that down into a bunch of assets that is then useful later on. So we created this with the developers. This is just a small example thinking about buttons and all the different states. So when you want to create a feature, it's easy for developers to come on here, find what they need to build it. So you need as little You can basically sit down and build with them, and there's a little delay between thinking of something, building all the wireframes, signing it all off, or you can sit straight down with them and build something that looks relatively visually good to begin with, and then polish it later. Here's just another example of things like error states. Those are all the things that are good to think about up front that you should need within the app later on. The other way that thinking about continuity in the beginning affected us was with the assets themselves. So this is one of our very kind early Kickstarter backers. And for those guys, well, for some of those guys, we did very bespoke foldables. So you can see here we even copied the pattern on his very attractive Hawaiian shirt. Got his glasses, his jawline, his 5 o'clock shadow even in there. This was obviously when we went to a lot of effort in the beginning, and our illustrator did a really good job. But we realised that this is something that isn't scalable for everyone at the level that we wanted to make it. So it was, again, thinking about when we brought in the next illustrator, how we kind of could pare it back to a more simplified version that would suit a lot more people. So there's a lot more options, and there's a lot more, I guess, it just works better across different configurations. So there's more configurations for more people, which is exactly what we wanted. We want to get foldable knees out to as many people as possible. Second lesson, a lot of people have probably talked about this in the 2 previous talks as well. Test early and test small. We're big fans of testing things at Mint. This can be as small, a test can be having a conversation with your teammates. If you have an idea, instead of going ahead and steaming on and wireframing out and doing loads of work, have a conversation, see if it's viable, talk to your team, get some feedback as early as possible, do a sketch, do a role play, depending on what it is. This is an example from my sketch this week even. We were working on a new sharing feature that we, some of the testing showed that we could benefit from having a sharing feature in the Create tool, which we didn't currently have. But instead of jumping straight into wires and doing really nice visuals, quick sketch in the sketchbook, sat down with the developer, talked to him about what was possible, and realised that he didn't need half the things that I was proposing that he needed. So it can be a good way of saving yourself a lot of time and effort. So we got that out the door relatively quickly, and it should be launching on the site next week, or the week after, something like that. Again, as Alice touched upon earlier, communication is definitely a very important factor. As much as you can, try not to work in silos of design and development. Work as a team as much as possible. If you're not in a position where you're in the same room, or you can't even sit beside your developer, or whatever the reason may be that you're not in the same place, make sure that you're checking in often. One great tool, well, among different tools that we use at Mint, Campfire, Basecamp, things like that, we use fog bugs where everything is recorded. So this is everything to do with foldable me that we want to build and implement, and both designers and developers have access here, and everyone can input in it, and everyone can be kept in the loop as to what's going on. So it's just a really good way of making sure that no one gets left out, and if someone's off work or working from home, that they don't come in and get shot the next day that we planned something crazy and they weren't consulted and it's not possible, etc. Fourth lesson, most important, a little bit cheesy, have fun, because making stuff is hard enough without having to take it so seriously all the time. So if you get a chance to take a step back and make room for more whimsical things, one thing that we like to do is we do quite a lot of seasonal promotions. We get a lot of feedback from people who have bought foldable knees, and they send in their pictures, and that's really good. We like to celebrate that. We like to feature that on our blog and things. We run promotions for different things. This is our Santa and our Halloween zombies. So yeah, that's basically it. Does anyone have any questions? Yep.
You guys are obviously really good at what you're doing, but as far as I understand, you were charging for, I mean, is it £10? If foldable knee, it's...
I think at the moment each one is $11.99.
Okay.
There's a handy discount code there if you do want to see one.
Yeah, I'll write that down.
We have identified that price as an issue.
Yeah.
It's something we're always thinking about, and that's one of the reasons why we then implemented a discount code.
No, but I understand that, but obviously as a business you have to charge your customer. I mean, that's how it works. But how do you convince? I mean, because if you're doing what you're doing, which is web designer, you know, working this prototype, how do you then work around selling the product?
So our team's made up of designers, developers, and also Richard, the guy who's been featured quite a lot. He's part of the marketing team, and he's very much in charge of making sure that foldables is being talked about in the right places. So we reach out to a lot of blogs, and we try and reach out to the people who we think would be interested in buying foldables and potentially using them for other promotional reasons. Something we're continuously working on, basically, is who wants to buy them and how we can make them more attractive to that person.
So you basically have someone who's charging PR and selling.
Yeah, as we're all kind of, it's all the responsibility of our own, but Richard is kind of, he leads that, and on a daily basis he kind of leads that part of it.
As well as we build features into the site, like the sharing that I mentioned earlier, is all hopefully helping towards spreading the word and getting it out there and getting it seen by the right people, like I said.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question? Yeah.
Just wanted to pick up on what you were saying about the sort of redoing, going back and making sure that the things like the design and the visual frameworks in place and things like that. Do you have any ideas or pointers for? I mean, obviously, if you're in a hackathon, you're trying to get something shiny and complete looking out there quickly, and then when you take it into a real product, at some point you've got to go back and do that step. I mean, when's a good time to do that? How do you manage that?
I would actually say I would do it the other way around. And looking back at it, I would focus on putting in quite a simple visual framework that is flexible in the beginning. It doesn't. I'm not a fan of people having to produce really shiny, beautiful things by the end of a hackathon. And I think that it's more important in those times that it functions and it sort of is a proof of concept, if you like. Because it has to go an awful long way if you're going to get it funded, for example, down the line. And I think that's when you should really put the time and effort in to really polishing the brand or polishing the look and feel. I think it's a good idea. I mean, that's not an excuse for it to look like crap. I'm not saying that. But I think it's a better design challenge to think around how to implement a visual framework that is flexible and that will work for something that is going to develop in the future, rather than making it look shiny, perfect in the beginning, because it's inevitably going to change later on. So that would be what I would do.
Yeah. Just to add that at the point where we've done our 4 days and we've proved the kind of concept of it and we got it working, I would like to have gone, okay, let's scrap that and start with a blank piece of paper in terms of the design and the development as well, because the guys, they did a great job of finding a really quick way and making it work, of getting a 2D asset onto a 3D model and then making it spin. It was fantastic. And we also, got the basis of a complicated website after 4 days. But to moving forward, I think we would have helped ourselves if we'd just taken a little bit of a step back at that point, and got more things in and got a style guiding process and kind of tweaked a few things then. I think that would have helped us.
Yeah, I think otherwise you amass a certain amount of design depth and technical depth that you just need to get to a point and say, right, let's fix this. Whenever you're at a point where it's going to make money, you're going to get invested or something like that. Anyone else?
First, congratulations on a really cute and good talk. Do you have any advice? You did this through a hackathon. Any advice on sort of team compositions and ratios of designers and developers and stuff like that to get something finished by the end of the hackathon?
I'd say maybe, keep it kind of even. It almost doesn't matter too much as long as everyone talks to each other. And everyone in any team, doesn't matter if you call yourself a developer or designer at work, or a manager, or a doctor. Everyone in that team should be a designer in that project, and that should be quite important. You should all work together to design your product together, because no one person. The designer could get a whole lot done really quickly, but everyone putting an impact will really improve it. And like we say, sit down with someone else, take them through the idea, and that'll improve it tenfold before you even coded anything. And developers should also be involved in the testing part as well. So last week, for a client piece of work, one of our developers did some user testing. He really enjoyed it, and I think he learned a lot as well. So get everyone involved in the design and the research and all that bit. It's harder for people to get involved with the coding part, because obviously you need to know the languages. So everyone should be involved in that.